So yeah, I generally prefer to do the meditation after the discussion, because we can carry that meditative state, which is very important. Carrying the meditative state is a very essential thing. See, I mean, I always give this example. If when you get into the swimming pool, right, you feel that wetness. And after you are there in a swimming pool for an hour, you don't feel that wetness. You kind of become part of it. And then when you come out of the swimming pool, you are looking for the towel because now you feel you are wet. Correct? So when we come out of the meditation is the very crucial thing because it kind of brings you to a complete aware state. And then it also gives you the sort of an experience, a feeling of what happened during meditation. And we take 5 minutes after meditation, close your eyes, don't engage in any activity. And Daji says, even if you kind of take a sip of water, it spoils the meditative condition. So once you imbibe that condition, then you take that condition into your day-to-day activities. That's a meditation process, right? But anyways, coming back to the Bhagavad Gita. So Bhagavad Gita is 18 chapters. If you divide Gita into 6 chapters, then it's 3 parts. The first 6 chapters, and then the next 6, and the last 6. So the first 6 talk about Tat. Sorry. So it is, if you see this statement, Tattvam Asi, the first 6 chapters talk about Tvam, means you. So Tattvam Asi means you are that. Asi is the ultimate, or Asi is you are. Sorry, and the Tvam is the ultimate. So if you look at it this way, it is talking about you, the first 6 chapters, the nature of you, what you can do. That's why the more focus becomes on the karma yoga. Of course, on chapter 2 he touches on all the yogas, but the more focus is on you. And then Asi, you are that, you become that. So that is the nature of God, nature of the higher principle. That's how the Gita is divided. And let's come to the second chapter, the more emphasis on the Karma Yoga. And of course, the entire sixth chapter is dedicated to the Dhyana Yoga. So on the second chapter, this is the most famous sloka, probably pretty much everyone would have heard about it. But there are so many interpretations of this. And so here is my take on any sloka, any verse when I read from Gita. I want to kind of hear what Lord must have meant really. So typically the way I read the sloka is I understand the verse, I understand the words, and then it kind of goes back into the mind. I always, stay with this prayerful mind to the Lord, please make me understand what you are actually implying. Now think about it. This is not, see, for example, if you see the Yoga Vasista, Yoga Vasista is about almost 27,000 verses. And Lord Rama and Yoga Vasista discussions, Vasista Muni's discussions, is the Yoga Vasista. They had all the time. They sat together for months and discussed on this subject. But Bhagavad Gita is not like that. It's in the middle of the war. And there is only so much time. So there is a time capsule for it. There is only so much Lord can convey. So when Lord is conveying in such a short time and such a profound teaching, profound message, so each verse is loaded basically. Each verse is pretty much loaded. So how do you, when it is loaded, we cannot really trivialize that message. So I'll tell you how a general interpretation, okay, very conventional thinking, but I want to take you to a very unconventional thinking from on this verse itself. So the conventional thinking is whatever the action you do, leave the phala, the fruits of your labor, to the Lord. That's the main purport of this message. So how we think, I mean, I've been into a lot of study groups, different people, when they shared their ideas, they said, always think that Bhagwan is doing this job and you act on it. And that may you don't think of the fruits of the labor. This is the conventional thinking. But I'll tell you some of the challenges with this conventional thinking. I don't say faults. So there is nothing wrong in spirituality. There is nothing wrong. There is nothing right. Even if you say this is right, it is wrong. Even if you say this is wrong, it is right. That paradox always happens. So, how do I read this? How do I understand this? Correct? So, if I am saying Lord is doing my job, automatically the understanding is it takes you away from the job. Means the whatever the stress added to the job is you are relieved from it. Good thought. But look at it this way, we are acting on things, whatever comes, whether it is studies, understanding some concept, whether your work, whether taking care of the family, there is always certain will, there is certain urge, there is certain what do you call zeal we put into it. So imagine what happens to that zeal if I think somebody else is doing that job. The zeal drops. That means your will also drops. That means basically you might enter into a situation, you might end up doing a very shabby job. Then why Lord has to kind of say that kind of an instruction that leave the karma phala to the Lord? If I don't have any objective to a job, will I be doing it? If I'm not seeing any fruit of my labor, would I be doing it with the same zeal? So the fruit of the labor, the objective of any work is in front of our eyes. Without an objective, we cannot really act. So I'm kind of giving these arguments so that we can kind of go a little deeper into this verse. Right? Do my arguments sound right? I mean, logical, correct?
Yeah.
So how do I sort of get into the real aspect of this verse? So look at it this way. So what happens whenever every action, there is a residue we carry onto our state of consciousness? What we can call it as an emotional memory. That residue is always remains. Any action, any engagement, even if we are watching a movie, there is a residue we are carrying onto our conscious state. Correct? So to me, I felt after doing a lot of thinking over this verse, I felt that Bhagwan is talking about that residue which you form on the space of consciousness. In heartfulness terms, we call it impressions, samskara. And when the samskaras solidify, what comes out is the vasana. We are pretty much driven by the vasanas. And that is why all our scriptures are talking about get rid of vasanas. That means go away from desire. They spoke about non attachment, detached from everything. As a result of this teaching, the sannyasa marga kind of became very prominent in our tradition. Leave everything. How can I leave everything? Even if I leave everything, I still need to take care of my body. I still need to feed it. Then I have to depend on the society to feed me just because I am a sannyasi. In the Bhagavad Gita days, right? The true sannyasi is who is not using any yantra, any unnatural techniques. That means they cannot even use the fire to cook food, or they should not be eating any food which is cooked under fire. That means they have to only eat raw vegetables, anything raw which is available. That means they should not be using any mechanism, any machinery. Imagine if I have to apply the same principle in today's world. What would happen to that state, a state of sannyasi? They cannot even find raw vegetables. Even those raw vegetables are plucked using the machines and transported. So there is a machine used even to bring those vegetables to any sannyasi. So here the karma is not really any action you undertake, or any action, whatever you are undertaking through your thoughts, through your emotion, through your thinking, leaves a residue on yourself. If you can leave that residue to the Lord, your consciousness is always pure, always simple, always drawn to the higher essence. So that way you are in a state of nirantara smarana, remembrance all the time. Probably that is what the Lord is indicating here. It is not about the karma phala, the earnings you make out of your work, or the objective of your work, whatever that action is. That is not the karma phala he is referring to. The residue you gain as part of your action, any thought, it leaves some residue. Leave that to the Lord so that your consciousness always remains pure. You see, this is how the unconventional thing. So I read Bhagavad Gita before Heartfulness. I mean, I've been reading, and it was a haphazard, hodgepodge reading. But after practicing heartfulness for almost 20-25 years, when I started reading Gita, it kind of gave me a totally different meaning, a different sense of approach, a different sense of thinking. Even the word detachment means very different to me. See, think about it, right? Suppose you are watching a movie. Even if a mosquito is biting you, you don't notice it until there is some burn and then you spot it. So whenever you are engaged in something, you're automatically detached from rest, everything other than where you are focused. It's a very natural phenomena for any human being, right? So you're automatically detached when you're focused on something. So imagine if you're constantly in touch with this essence, what happens is, even though you are attached to your family, your job, your work, and your identity, your social identity, physical identity, whatever those identities are, several identities, they all are there, but at the same time, uh, they become insignificant. So just because I have to detach, I don't have to leave my job, I don't have to leave my family. But attached to that which encompasses everything, that means which is inclusive. We always think of spirituality, we always looked at Adhyatmik Marg as something to negate this world. But the real teaching, if you look at it, I mean, this I understood only after practicing heartfulness. It is an inclusive of everything. There is no negation here. It is only enhancing, expanding your consciousness, going to a higher and higher state. As we go into higher and higher state, the things associated, the things which are very important before, become insignificant. So now am I detached or am I attached? It is neither. That is the state we are kind of moving towards. Now, if you read these slokas from a very, 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 in a very simple way and look at it as a Bhagavan is giving a very profound message, not a silly message that you just leave your fruits of labor to the Lord. That's not what he's talking about. He's talking about something more deeper, which contributes to your spiritual evolution. Just by leaving my labor to the Lord, thinking, it's only presumption, right? It's only a mental projection. But the more we keep on making these mental projections, we've already mastered it in our day to day life. Now, even spirituality, we are kind of bringing the same mental projections. It is actually a detrimental path than an ennobling path. So, the real way to look at it is whatever the residue it is leaving on me, let it be taken away by the Lord so that I remain in his remembrance without any distortion. You know what is purity is? Purity is that which is not distorted by anything, which is already pure. But we are forcing this residue onto it so that the vibratory state, the pure vibratory state, is distorted when it reaches your mind. Consciousness is always pure. You cannot make the consciousness impure. But in between, you are adding a layer. And through that layer, when that vibrations reach the mental state, the perception of the real state kind of distorts. And that is what Shankara spoke about is Maya. It is Maya because it is coming through a distorted lens, not as is. Then we say, oh, this whole world is Maya, so negate this world. How do you negate this world being in that world? Can a fish say, I am not part of this ocean and negate itself and come up, jump out of the ocean? It ceases to exist. So when you are in it, within it, it has to be an inclusive process, but not the process of negation. So all that we are thinking is actually reverse, detrimental to a spiritual path. It's everything inclusive. Oh, I am this, I am that. That's fine. But connect with this Lord. Let the Lord guide you. Let the heart guide you. That's why whenever we say Lord is guiding you, it's here. He is everywhere. That means he's within you, guiding you all the time. Only thing is we stop listening to it. And we stop listening to it not because we are not listening, because we have all these distorted layers on top of it. And this is where the heartfulness cleaning comes into the picture. So in our next session, I'll talk about the prarabdha karma, sanchita karma, and how it affects our life patterns. So I'll stop here for any questions. After that, we can get into meditation. Questions or comments. You can share your own observation. It's not just questions.
Yeah. Am I audible?
Yes.
Yeah. So this has been a point of discussion in several groups, in my case also. So each one has a different way of looking at this verse. But then, now that you have put forward something new, let's take one example so that it's easy for us to understand. The present burning case of Kejriwal, let's say he has done some action.
Right.
Of some, let's assume that he has done something illegal, it's proven. So let's say it's a illicit liquor case. So that's an action. Now, there is some result, because of that action, there is some result which has come up. Okay, that we are not talking about. The residue of that action is what we are, leaving it to the God. I mean, we are not we are just in submission to the God in with regard to the residue of this action. Now, does that mean that uh, he'll be free from all these things? Like as you rightly, as you said, it's there's no right thing, no wrong thing in the spiritual realm, so he can get away with it, and then he'll be a free man.
That's a very good point, a very good question. If they can really do it, um, yes. See, the principle is always true. The principle is not diverted, because of something, right? The principle of gravity, for example, it always works the same way. You cannot really change the principle or even the application of it. If he can really do it, if Kejriwal can really develop that kind of a remembrance. But remember this. Now that means it refines your mental discernment abilities, Viveka Buddhi, what we call. Everything has to be enhanced along with it. You cannot just be in tangentially in one direction and you can call yourself to be in the state of remembrance. It doesn't work like that. The principle doesn't work like that, right? So the pull of gravity is always there, but you can also use that escape velocity to kind of go against that principle. So what we are really going against is our natural inner principle for all the activities we are engaging in, whether criminal or not. So that's why I'm saying, regardless whether it's a good activity or a bad activity, in our qualification, in our discernment, has to leave a residue on you. So here I'm not qualifying, remember. But if you have the ability, if you develop this ability to kind of gain this remembrance, all the residue drops off. The principle has to work like that, right?
Hmm.
Somewhat difficult to digest, but true.
When you say
But
Srinavan,
at the same time, because of your discernment, Viveka Buddhi, you don't enter into an action which is going to harm others and yourself. It's not possible,
Hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Sorry, Subbu, you're saying.
No, I think it's Raghu.
Raghu, yeah.
well, yeah, I think you also started to say something. There's some audio, but when you say Srinavan, when you say he's going to get away with it, what do you mean he's going to get away with it? If you know you've done something wrong and you just say, but just by leaving the residue to God, it doesn't mean you get away with it. It's on your conscience, right?
I mean, here
Hmm.
getaway is basically that your getaway from that residue which is accumulated as a layer on top of your consciousness. So here there is no sin or virtue. Like one lady from a Christian background, she's in her late 70s. I met her once to give her meditation session. And she said, on a judgment day, God will decide whether I go to hell or heaven. So I asked that lady, what do you think God will decide? And she said, I'm sure he will put me in hell. So we had a big laugh. And then I told her, suppose you're building a clock. Would you be building a clock where you have to adjust the second every second yourself? Or would you build a clock where it adjusts every second itself? So naturally, you build a clock which automatically works, right? If you have to move the second every second yourself manually, it is no clock and it's a waste of your time. So do you think God is less foolish that he has to monitor us every action, every second? So the clock is built into us. The discernment is built into us. We all know what is right, what is wrong in our lives. Even the dog knows. I mean, those who have pet dogs, if it has done something, it doesn't come at you wagging its tail when you walk into the house. It'll be probably hiding under a bed or something. Even the dog knows whether it's doing right or wrong. So we all know. Now it is up to our capacity to develop this discernment, Viveka Buddhi, so that our actions is always supporting our ennoblement, moving towards these higher states. And also it helps other people around you. So you can never do wrong. If you are on a true, in a very sincere way, if you approach this. So here, no, there is no judgment. Neither you are judging nor God is judging. If you say God is in everything and everywhere, He is there in the sin, He is there in the virtue. So if there is a sin, there is sin in God because He is everywhere. He cannot escape just sin and only take virtue, right? So that's the principle of God. Now, if I am engaged with that higher principle, my actions also will align accordingly.
The question was, okay, we are into the awareness. Let me
Correct.
switch on my video. Okay, 1 second. So we decide our actions based on what we think is right and wrong. The principle being we are not harming others, and whatever we are doing it's limiting its effect on our life only, not affecting others, and we, if only possible, we are helping others.
Correct.
So that keeps us clean.
Okay. So
But then I'm talking about those people who don't be the residue and what will happen to them. See, basically, I'll just put one more point and then probably we'll close it here.
Yeah.
See, one side, we have been told since childhood that Shivagna lenide Shimena kuttadu.
Correct.
On one side. The other side, you say you have the free to do whatever you want to, you choose. Life is all about choices, what has shaped your destiny.
Correct.
Now, if you say that if God Himself, without His permission, nothing can happen, so there's no sin actually.
Correct.
There is no evil. There is no the great things. So
Right.
what is this confusion like? I actually hear different versions of so many things. Conveniently, they use different statements for different occasions. That's all I've understood.
No, very good. See, actually, you are right. I mean, dot on. Okay. Look at it this way. We kind of think Shiva is something other than you. That's why you're saying some Shiva has to permit you to do something.
Yeah.
But that's why I said if it is everything in everywhere, it's there in your consciousness, that Chaitanya Shakti behind your consciousness is also Shiva. So that means all humans are bestowed with this free will. And that will is backed up by this godly power. Now, how you use this free will, that discernment, that Viveka Buddhi is something we have to develop. Whether it is a terrorist, Osama bin Laden, blowing some country also, it is backed up by the godly power only. It cannot be anything else. So, I mean, this is a very dangerous concept to look at it one way. But
Yeah.
that's how the principle works. We cannot avoid it. So here it's not the qualification of good and bad. It's the qualification. That's why dharma really means sustenance of life. Dharma doesn't talk about good and bad. What is that something has to happen for the life to sustain in a harmonious way, in a harmony. So wherever there is a disturbance in that harmony, even within yourself, the thoughts are disturbing. I'm depressed. I'm not. There is a disharmony. So that means even within yourself, we are going against the dharma. So dharma is sustenance of life. So as long as the sustenance of life is supported by all humanity, that means it brings total harmony. Because there is a disharmony, then we have to sort of engage in something to bring that harmony. Otherwise, it's a harmony is a very natural thing which should happen automatically.
Mm.
So that's why you are right. Without that Chaitanya Shakti, no action will take place. But the Chaitanya Shakti is already given to you. The permission is already given to you. So the free will is there for every human being, which is you can say it's a bad design of the nature. But it is what it is. Right?
But what will be the difference in the residual outcome of Osama bin Laden and let's say somebody who's very pious?
There's no difference. Somebody who's pious also have to, whatever their pious actions creating this residue, that needs to be cleaned. The person who is doing all the evil activities, even that residue needs to be cleaned. So there's no escape. The consciousness has to be pure. If it has to be pure water, if you put sugar in it or poison in it, both are making the water impure. If I want to have pure water, we cannot have neither sugar in it nor poison in it.
True.
Right? That's as simple as it is.
And from their vantage point, they feel they are justified actually. They are doing
So
for the benefit of the greater. From their vantage point, terrorist things,
right.
They are doing the right thing for the greater benefit of the humankind.
Always, if
Jihad.
the action is not justified, nobody will do it. If any action, even for me to smoke a cigarette, that smoking is justified. Otherwise, I won't be correct.
True. True.
So every action, any criminal activity, pious activity, everything is justified. Otherwise, nobody will take action on it. So how do you justify what parameters you use is the free will of that individual and their Viveka Buddhi. They might be thinking greater good or smaller, only for a particular sect or for my own achievement of heaven. I don't, it doesn't matter. Right? So there's always a justification, whether it's from the religious background, scriptural background, or from your own personal experiences and personal background. Everything is justified. So the justification is the problem, and justification can only refine our justification. Only my mental state, my conscious state, and my ego state is refined. Right? And thank you. I mean, you actually brought up very good points. So
yeah.
So if you're
thanks for clarifications. Yeah.
So if you're all ready, we can get into meditation.